happy to have you here again and talking about Vedic psychology. I'd like to know more that we often speak of introspection during the classes or even in the Vedic psychology sessions. You also mentioned introspection, right? So when you advise this to do, then what do you actually mean? First, the definition of it, and the other, the actual process or application for somebody.
Well, the word introspection means to study your own mind, how it is functioning, and basically studying your actions. Why did you do particular thing? What made you to act in a particular manner? And whether it was appropriate for you to act in that manner or you should have done differently.
Right.
It's like taking a stock of your actions. So that's what I mean by introspection. Usually our mind is always going outwardly. Senses, mind, both are primarily going outward to the world. We see things outside, we hear sounds from outside, we smell things, we taste. So basically we are busy sensing the world externally. But there is a lot inside us, and that is more important than what is outside, because what is inside you, that is what is making you act. That is what is guiding you. That is basically your programming, which is making you feel or make decisions and then act on those decisions. So introspection is actually to study that if you had some, say, argument with a person and later on you felt bad about it. So you sit down and then you think that, why did I get into this argument? Was it really worth it? Was it worth my time? And what is the outcome of this? Maybe I should have just avoided it by speaking in a different manner or by keeping quiet. So these kinds of things are part of introspection.
Right.
And this needs, of course, stability of the mind, because your mind has to be stable. And to say it in Vedic psychology terminology, introspection is to be done with buddhi, because buddhi is the part of mind or our subtle body which is responsible for awareness. So basically introspection means becoming aware of yourself and your actions. And that awareness is possible if you utilize your buddhi, which you can translate as wisdom or intellect. So that is the way to see your own mind. Usually we know things from outside world through the mind. Any sense which brings a sensation to you, it is first given to the mind, and then mind tries to make a sense out of it, basically in two ways, whether it is pleasing or not pleasing, likable or not likable. And then that may lead to a particular desire, and then you act on that desire, or you don't want to act on that desire. That is, decision is taken by intelligence, and that is if you are aware of your mind.
Right, and on this point I wanted to direct to you. When Babaji speaks about awareness, what is there must be a moment before you are aware of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you prescribe, do introspection before you develop the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So how to tackle that? What is the first step towards awareness in this?
The way I describe it is, as soon as you're not feeling peaceful or content, whenever you notice that you're not feeling peaceful in your body, some people are more aware of physically how their body feels. You know, if they're starting to get tense, sometimes they feel it in their shoulders, or they'll notice their heart's beating, or they're sweating. Whatever the first sign is for you, physically sometimes is the easiest way to do it. And then obviously if you're doing that, your body's doing something like that, you're starting to escalate and you're not peaceful. So the first sign, your body's actually talking to you through these physical sensations. So that's a way to say, oops, something's off. Something's going on with me. And then you have to figure out how to bring yourself back down. And there's multiple layers. One is, okay, what do I like or what don't I like Babaji said. But also part of the introspection, not in the moment, but later on is, okay, why don't I like that? Like, was I born not liking that, or did something happen in my life to make that a not like? And that's also what we're not aware of too, is what's going on in our unconscious mind. In the Vedic psychology terminology, in your chitta, your samskara. So you could have a very bad past experience in your unconscious that's driving you to not like something, and then to not like somebody because of that. So your mind does this very quick process of saying, I don't like her, because she looked at me that way. And you don't realize it reminds you of how your mom used to look at you when she would always criticize you, just say.
Right.
And so then before you know it, you're being mean to that person. And you don't realize, you're not aware. Like Babaji said, you have to watch your actions first and then figure out, why did I do that? And dig and keep looking at, okay, was I born just not liking that person? Or what happened to me that made me not like that type of person?
Right. So then there is all this look at the impressions of the mind, right? So where you actually see an object, let's say somebody's body, to say it as an object, and it reminds you of something, and then you react to what it reminded you of. So actually, when you look at somebody, then is it that in the same moment we are all the time introspecting?
No, you can introspect all the time only if you have developed awareness, but that's very rare. Most of the people are not doing introspection because they are not aware of what they are doing or how they are reacting to the situation. So this needs a lot of practice. And without practice, unless somebody has been practiced in the past life and is born with that awareness, usually that's not the case. So that's where we need to do sadhana practice, whether you are following bhakti yoga or karma yoga or any other path of yoga. You have to develop this awareness, and this needs regular practice. So as he made a good point that one of the way to feel is something happening in your body, some pain or some discomfort. But even if that is not there, you don't have to wait for that pain to happen in your body. You can just try to be with your senses, because the greatness of the senses is that they are always in the present. If you have to taste a food, you can't taste a food which you ate yesterday. You can only taste what is in your mouth now at this present. So one way to develop awareness is to be with your senses, especially while eating. So eating is a very important part of our life. Everybody eats, everybody loves to eat. So do this with awareness. But mostly we don't eat with awareness. We are eating and we are doing something else. We are eating and chatting, or we are eating and watching TV. We are eating and driving, or doing so many other things. But if you really want to develop awareness, eat and only eat. Just be there. And this is one example I am giving. Another way is become conscious of your breath. So just as eating is a very important part of our life, breath is even more important. You don't eat all the time, but we breathe all the time. So this breathing is happening continuously, effortlessly. So become aware of it, and breathing is also in the present. Breathing is not in the past or in the future, it is in the present. So if you cannot become aware of your breath, then you come into the present, and awareness basically means being in the present, being where you are, So these are some simple, techniques I am saying. There are many things, chanting of mantras and different paths, prescribed different.
So will that mean that on some point, if you're practicing introspection, as you said in the beginning, and the result of introspection or the goal is to develop the awareness, so on some point you reach the awareness, so is it that you drop introspection, or the introspection remains but it's being done continuously? And is the later direction, is it into more awareness or in some different kind of introspection?
Yeah, so when you become fully aware, then you don't need introspection, because you are introspecting all the time. But in the beginning that's not the case. So I recommend that besides developing your awareness, every day, at least at the end of the day when you are in your bed, and usually you don't fall asleep immediately unless you are really tired. So in those moments when you have gone to bed and you are still not entering into the whatever alpha, beta, gamma rays, whatever they call it, means you are still awake, then try to brood over your day's activity. What did you do in the daytime? And what was the thing which created some trouble for you, or you could have done it in a different way? Did you hurt somebody by your words, or did you do some other immoral, illegal, illicit act which you should not have done? Because you are the best person to judge yourself. Usually our mind is busy judging others, which may also be necessary, because we have to deal with human beings, we have to deal with people, we have to deal with our peers, so we have to know them. So I'm not saying that you should not look at them, although people say don't judge. Okay, don't judge does not basically means don't be biased towards certain people just because they're born in a particular family or a culture or belong to a particular religion. That's what I mean, not judging. Otherwise, we have to judge people. If I have to work with somebody, I have to know that person, I have to know the character, and it's good to know that. So that I know the nature of this person, then accordingly I can act with. Some people are, loose tempered, so I have to know this, then I have to be aware of it. So these are the type of things you can do at night. And then, we also have our own behavior, our own nature, our habits. So we can try to analyze which kind of habit I need to change, because it's always bringing some trouble to me. It's causing some problem in my relations. Sometimes there may be some very simple things which, create big problems in human relations, whether it is with your partner, with your siblings, or at the work. So it may not be a very big problem. It just may be the way you say things. Maybe you raise your voice, or you do something which other person does not like. Your intention may not be bad, the way you just look, and it may create some ill feelings in the mind of other person, or the way you dress. Sometimes I have a beard, people may not like that. Sometimes they think this guy is, maybe he's belonging to some terrorism group.
Right.
So you have to actually see the status of the other people, because everybody has certain background experience, they read, see things. So what impression I create on them, and they may react. They may not have actually bad intentions, but it's just because they are born and brought up like that, they react in a particular way. So all this can be done in introspection. And this is very interesting actually, if you do that.
And here I want to ask Joshika, in your experience with working with people who actually come to you, so they already open like the gate for introspection, right? And they are interested. So what do you find is most difficult for them to introspect on? Is it some particular emotion or topic, or is it very individualized because of their experiences?
Usually when people come, they start with almost inevitably complaining about someone. So they come and what you said is like they come in and they'll like at night when you think about how this person bothered me or that person bothered me, we're so good at judging other people and not realizing, how myself, how I might have bothered somebody. So that's usually what they come in for. Like, I'm having a relationship problem, so it's her fault. Or I'm having a problem with my mother or my father or my work. They're not, but they want to talk about that, and they want to get that person to change. So once I can get them to start looking at themselves and realizing, even though you say the gate's open to introspect, it's not really.
Oh.
They're coming in and they want to figure out how I can help them get someone else to change, basically. So then hopefully we can get past that hump and they can realize, no, actually this has something to do with them. And once we're in the introspection zone and they're open to it, then the hardest part is to realize how their mother or father is affecting them now, affecting their thoughts about how the world works, all their relationships, not just one, but all of their relationships, how they feel, how they behave. The parents have put this programming into them that Babaji talked about, and that's the hardest part because they don't want to see it, and if they do see it, it's so painful. Because then they feel like, now you're making my parent become like a monster. I love my parents, and oftentimes they'll defend, the ego will come in and defend how great the parents were. It's just too painful to look at that. And so the idea is not to bash the parents. They were doing the best they can based on the samskaras they had. But the idea is to kind of take responsibility for however your parent, whatever impression they put on you, that you as an adult are still playing out, that's hurting yourself and everyone else. So that's actually the deepest work. But it's hard to get people to go there because it's almost like in the session, in the hour, they stretch and they open and maybe they got the point, and then a week later they come back and they're back again to the next issue, which is usually a symptom. And then I try to get them to open again and look at that samskara, and then come back again. So when they can actually look at it and really understand it and own it, and by that I mean actually process the feelings that they never processed before.
So Babaji mentioned once about the stability of the mind to do introspection. And do you feel that often introspection is unreliable to your patients because their mind is not stable? Because if every week they come back, otherwise how to introspect if the mind is in an unstable way?
So that it's difficult because oftentimes that's what I'm saying, when they come back they're still being triggered by someone in some situation.
Right.
They're not introspecting. So like Babaji said, there's all these different types of practices. So each time that they come to a Vedic psychology session, we're making a new samskara. It's like a new practice. So they need help at the beginning. Yeah. Just like chanting the mantra, if they keep looking at it and keep bringing their mind back to the mantra, it's the same idea as with Vedic psychology. We keep bringing you back to look at that samskara. No matter how painful it is and wherever your mind goes. In fact, the more painful it is, the more excuses and stories the person comes in with. Right. Because it's way too painful. And then it's almost like as we try to get near the painful spot, then they go off on something, So that's how we know we're actually getting close to it. But introspecting itself, naturally as a process, it's difficult. Because part of it is being aware of your actions, but also figuring out why. And the why is hidden. It's like you have to dig and dig and dig, and then when you finally find it, it's too hard to look at sometimes.
Right. So there seemed to be like a dance between the pain and pride and some kind of will of being aware of what is happening, right?
No, because you see the thing is that if you have some painful experience, you don't want to be reminded of that. So the tendency is to repress that. And not only repress that, but you don't even want to hear about it. So that is one part, because it's very painful. And then there is a pride factor related, because I don't want to be known that my parents were nonsense, or I belong to a family which was very cruel. So I also have my identity, because I identify with that, So I don't want that my identity gets sullied, looks like there's some spot in it. So I want to keep it look very clean. So these are the reasons why there is repression of the facts. And when I repress those facts, then I have to use some technique, and the best is to blame someone else. That actually she is a bitch and he's a nonsense and he's this and he's that. So this is the way we divert our own attention and also the attention of the therapist. So as she said, that the door is not really open, but there's a hole in it. So it's our job to peep into the hole and see the garbage inside, which is hidden there, and then try to clean it. So that's how it works.
Why is repression connected with this compensation? Because what is the connection between the two? Is it like that still the will for looking for some kind of pleasurable experience that makes you do nonsense and use your pride instead of looking at the pain and acknowledging that it's there?
From what I've seen, whatever the most painful experience you've had is, there's a direct relationship between that painful experience and the personality that you're manifesting. So you're trying to cover for that. So, one example you gave is like the more pain you had, the louder you laugh, right? That type of thing. So that's almost how you can tell what the samskara is too, by the way that the person is demonstrating something now, exhibiting some behavior. Oh, that's for that samskara actually, right? And
you just do the opposite from that, so that no one ever sees the
Notice.
problem. Yeah, and even you may not notice it. It's not necessarily that you actually do it with big plan or anything. It's your mind who arranges these things. So whatever is, if you have an inferiority complex, then you boast all the time, how great I am and how great were my parents, and I come from this big family, and you try to basically cover up your inferior feelings for yourself. And the best way to cover for yourself is when you show it to others and the others say, yes, you are so great. So you have to get confirmation from others. So that's why people go and, if you belong to a particular guru and you really actually having some problem with him, you don't have 100% faith, or you think that there is something wrong, then you try to actually go to other people and tell them how great is my guru, and when they say yes, he is very great, so you feel comforted, that actually I'm all right, I'm with the right person, I'm following the right path. So you do with the same thing. It may be related with your parents, with your job, with your partner. So you try to cover up in a way your feelings of inferiority.
And the other thing with that is that the more, it's almost like if you become quiet and stable, even if you say, okay, I'm going to do a meditation practice, or I'm going to do a mantra chanting practice, when you get quiet, in other words, there's nothing outside triggering you. You're not talking to somebody didn't look at you in the wrong way, you're just sitting. Then the samskaras also come. Maybe not so obviously that you're having a flashback of a memory, but uncomfortable feelings come. And so in a way, that those painful things are with you all the time, basically. And so to just sit and to not create some sort of drama, it's still painful. So a lot of people who have unprocessed pain, they can't really sit. It's not just that their mind is going here and there, it's uncomfortable. And so they will create drama in their lives in some way, to not just feel it.
You have to keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
So that you don't get time to see your own problem.
Yes.
Because as soon as you stop, that problem stares at you from very deep. And you don't like that. So then you have to keep yourself busy all the time. That's one of the reasons that people are always busy.
Yes.
And they don't like to be left alone. That's big scare for them.
So the space where a person is sitting, but they still cannot kind of focus on their mind because it's too busy, they need to do something. Is that the moment where you would say that, it's good to introspect through writing? Because then you actually sit, and then you do something also. And I know that you're prescribing it to your patients. How do you feel that is working, if people are writing?
It depends on the person. So some people are naturally, that's their nature, and they'll go for it. But the general principle I use is this concept of like leaning into the sharp points, because basically the sharp point is there, and we tend to run. So writing is one way to do it for sure, if people have that natural inclination, and there's lots of things you can do, but the idea is when you're there and the pain's there, to look at it. Because it actually, believe it or not, it dissolves when you actually look at it. When you put the awareness on it, it dissolves, but most people don't want to look at it. They want to do anything but that. So the idea is you can look at it through writing, definitely, and that's helpful. There's lots of techniques for that.
So basically it's a simple thing. That's why I said awareness. That when you do awareness, you don't need introspection. Because when you become aware, the problem goes away. It's
That's the riddle.
as simple as that. But we try to avoid it all the time. And even if somebody tells you that you have this problem, you fight back. That no, I don't have this problem, and you're just trying to criticize me, and you get angry, you get mad. You don't want to see that person again. So there was a great saint in India. His name was Kabir. I think you may have heard his name.
Poet.
Yeah, he was a poet, but not just a poet. He was a saint. He was a realized person. So he said that you should always keep a critique next to you. He says actually give him a place in your backyard. So that he will always keep you aware of your problems. And more aware you become, more you will clean yourself.
Right.
And it is interesting that in India, the philosophy actually is called darshana. There is no real word for philosophy in Sanskrit or Indian languages. The word which we use is darshana, which actually means seeing. So it's all about seeing. So you see the problem goes away.
Right.
But we don't want to see. We want to remain in darkness and cover it up. And then we have all kinds of things. We rationalize, we project, we compensate, we boast. So all these solutions mind finds, but they don't work because the problem is not going to go away. This is the beauty, that the problem will continue even in your next life unless you actually deal with it and become aware of it, acknowledge it.
I heard a nice African proverb. It says, if there is no enemy within, then the enemy outside can do us no harm. Is that something also similar?
Yeah, this is the real enemy. So that's why introspection, awareness, because the real enemy is inside, not outside.
And is that always the case?
Always the case. Because if you are aware, then nobody can harm you. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that the self cannot be cut into pieces, you cannot burn it, you cannot wet it, you cannot wither it by wind, nobody can do anything to you. Okay, maybe it's best they can do something to your body, but that's okay. Still, you are untouched.
I must say, I have a friend who's my favorite critic, and he will always point something. And I appreciate his messages to a way that I really look and what is coming there. I say, oh, that's the subject of introspection. It really touched me in some way. So if I react or something irritates me outside anything, that is a potential subject to introspection, because as you said, it gives you even physical feedback, right?
Yeah, because for me, I'm always saying if you're not calm and peaceful, then something's wrong.
Right.
Basically, some scar has been triggered. So as soon as you're not peaceful and calm, and even what Babaji said about your breath, you can use your breath in the present moment also to be aware of. He said you can use it to bring you into the present moment, but you also can, if your breath starts changing, you can tell you're starting to get anxious. Your breath changes, an anxiety type of breath versus an angry type of a breath versus a depressed type of breath. None of those breaths are the same. And none of those breaths are a peaceful type of breath. So if you do a breath practice and become aware of it, that also can help you just in the present moment realize, oops, I'm like panting, something's off. And then you can introspect about what's going on, and try to change it right in the moment instead of letting it escalate.
Yeah, your breathing pattern is directly related to your emotions. So as the emotions change, your breathing pattern changes, always.
And what is the breathing pattern of devotion?
Breathing pattern of devotion is that it is balanced, calm. Of course, in devotion then there are devotional emotions. So then the pattern changes, but those are different. But first you have to get rid of the disturbance coming from the material emotions.
Right.
Then in devotion there are all types of patterns, but they are not harmful.
Do we also use introspection for something more than psychological issues?
No, introspection is for self-realization, for knowing yourself, for reaching God, for reaching the ultimate goal of life, happiness. Introspection is not just to solve your psychological problems, but solve actually the bigger problem of identification with material body and mind, and which is the root cause of all problems. So that's why I said that Indian philosophy is called darshana. Ultimately, you have to have darshan of yourself.
And here, please tell me about introspection with guidance and introspection without guidance.
The introspection with guidance means that you have a mentor and that he is giving you some guidance, like he may give you some style, as you said, that you write things and then read it, analyze. And just like you have two types of nyaya, logical inferences, one is for yourself, one is for someone else. When you make inference for yourself, you don't go through the whole process. It's just a mental thing. But if you have to make an inference for another person to prove something to that person, then there are 5 steps. So you have to make a proposition, then you have to give a reason, you have to give an example, then application of it, then conclusion. So that is a different way of doing it. So similarly, guided is like writing all these steps and then using them. And without that is, your individual way how you work with it.
And then there's a possibility of having too many topics, no, coming. Because isn't it the unconscious mind like compared to an ocean and so on, and you may have so many things to go to, and if the ocean is dark, you just have a torchlight and you swim. And without guidance, the introspection is very hard, right? Maybe even frustrating. So, would you recommend it to do without guidance? And if somebody just starts and they want to have a diary or a journal, would you tell them like, okay, do it, but to some extent. On some point, you may get lost in your own writing, and it's better to have guidance. Or is really like this, that introspection itself will reveal to you that you need a guide and you will go for it?
Well, it depends on your wisdom. If you are a wise person, then you will come to that point yourself that you need help. But if you are not very wise, then you may be just lost in that introspection. So it is better to take help. Whether you have a psychotherapist, you go to her and take help, or you have a mentor or some guide or somebody. Obviously it's very difficult to see your own flaws.
Right.
This is the point we have been saying, that our mind plays these tricks because it doesn't want to see the problem. Therefore it tries to repress them and then project them on someone else. So difficult. So some help is good. If you have some help, some guidance, then you will make quicker progress in it.
What I would say too is that we're trying to understand our mind with our mind. And Babaji makes this point a lot, which is so tricky because you come in with ideas of how the world works, and where did you learn those from? Most likely dysfunctional parents. So then how do you figure out what's not working and what's working? You can look at your behavior, but it's still very tricky to think, okay, so what is a healthy behavior? What is a healthy thought? What is a healthy emotion? Because you grew up in a family and that's your heritage. So you think that that's normal. And so many times I'm educating people saying that's not normal actually what happened. Let me describe what normal is. Normal, but what's healthy, basically.
Right.
Well, let me describe what a healthy communication is. Let me describe what a healthy mother would have been like, a healthy father would have been like, and it's news. It's really news to most people. So that's also why it's difficult to study, because even if you are earnestly trying your hardest to change and to introspect, you're using your mind, or maybe some self-help book or something, to try to figure it out, and it's, like you said, it's a big, dark ocean. And so to have a guide who can educate you and say, and to kind of help you, catch you on a few things and give you some tools. That's the ideal situation, that you learn a few tools and then you can introspect. But you learn from somebody who already sees it and can help you see the key areas you need to look at and can give you some tools to keep coming back on, and then you go and introspect.
Right. At the beginning of the conversation you mentioned something about many lives and past lives, and now you're speaking about the relationship with the parents, right? So I think that would be something I would like to close the conversation with. How do you see that this connection of that we are actually born to particular parents? And now first we need to disentangle our mind from projecting onto others what unhealthy parentship was. But still in the same moment we need to kind of regain responsibility that these particular parents we also have for a reason, right? And this is impossible or possible before looking at the pain from this life. Or because otherwise there may be some syndrome of forced compassion, which doesn't necessarily work. So how is this connected, that we have actually these parents and we need to go through all this mud of analyzing what happened with us, why we actually do it, and
See, ultimately we have to understand that, as you said, that it's an ocean. So just introspecting it, it will never come to an end.
right.
So I mentioned earlier that you have to go to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of problem is that we are ignorant about our own self. And once you come to that point, then all this introspection is not needed. So this introspection is to basically, if somebody is very dysfunctional in the society, in the life, and is not able to even function normally, so situation normally, then these things are needed. But ultimately one has to come to the point that one has to go beyond this normal state and be completely aware of one's own self. And then these things don't matter, that to which parents you are born and what was your past karma. You'll transcend all that. Once you come to see yourself,
you start to swim in a different ocean.
Yeah. Then you actually transform yourself from this mess into a very peaceful, healthy state of existence. And that's why I said that then there is no need of introspection after that.
So what do you do?
Then you actually live.
Oh.
Then you really live, the life which is meant for living. That's the beginning. Now we are struggling. One is floating on the ocean, another is that you are going down and you are drinking water and you are coming up and you got a little breath and you think, oh, this is so nice, and then you are going down again. So life is going through these things. But then you actually live a smooth, peaceful, happy life. And that's the purpose.
All right.
Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jai Shri Ram.